So around 3 years or so ago, when I was in graduate, I would be gone in class every Wednesday until around 11:30 p.m. One night when I came home, my husband was a little unnerved and said the oddest thing happened to him. He said when he was in the basement, after putting our kiddos to bed, ages 11 and 7, he heard the oddest thing. He said the tune that the nurse in the movie Kill Bill whistles, now I know it's called Twisted Root, sounded like the wind or something was whistling. He said it started out slowly and didn't sound human. I didn't know what to think about this. I was too tired to really freak out. So this is pretty much forgotten by me, as I could not explain it, still can't, and don't care. And I was in the basement, home with just myself and my sleeping baby who was upstairs, when I heard the oddest noise. It started out as a soft, windy whispering, then began to take more shape and form, becoming recognizable as that tune from Kill Bill when the nurse is coming to kill the bride. It didn't sound like human whistling, but as if the wind became cognizant and could whistle. Anyway, I didn't feel scared, but I did turn around and try to sort out where this could be coming from. This melody lasted probably no longer than 20 seconds and then was gone, and the house was completely quiet again. I called my husband and told him that the same thing happened to me that happened to him. He was sort of freaked out and more curious, as we had both remembered and discussed how this tune had been the ringtone on the phone of the man who had introduced us, who was his best friend and my step-uncle, a long story. The creepy part is, this man had been dead at this point for at least 2 years. He committed suicide at least 2 years prior to this. He was always someone who would try to scare the crap out of you, if he could, so it makes sense that it could be him. I went on a Tinder date a couple of years ago. Everything started out relatively normal. We met at a nice downtown restaurant for dinner. She was even prettier in person, and the conversation was flowing. However, it didn't take long for me to realize she was super private. For example, she would not tell me her last name, where she worked, or say anything about her family. She made it clear that she was protecting herself, and honestly, I don't blame her. I shrugged it off, and the date continued. She took great interest in the fact that I was in seminary studying to be a pastor. That was nice because usually it's a deal breaker for most women, at least in my experience. Towards the end of our meal, she confessed something to me. "I have something to tell you, but please don't think I'm crazy." I braced myself for whatever she was about to say. She explained that she recently moved into a new apartment. She lived alone, which was also a new thing. Though she couldn't put her finger on it, she was convinced there was a presence of a sinister and paranormal nature in her apartment. She had hardly slept since she moved in because she was plagued with the constant nightmares and strange occurrences. I could see the fear and exhaustion in her eyes. She seemed quite sincere. "I can tell you're a good guy," she said. She elaborated that I seemed trustworthy and had a calming presence. "I know how this sounds, but would you please come home with me tonight? Honestly, I'm just scared to go back there alone. I am not looking for sex." I was really taken aback by this. It's not every day I get asked to spend the night with a beautiful woman whom I just met. I figured she was either telling the truth, or she picked a really odd way to initiate something intimate. Either way, the night would be interesting. We talked for a bit longer, and I agreed to spend the night with her. I followed her home, and when I walked into her apartment, I was immediately struck with bad vibes. There was just something ominous about the place. I didn't want to freak her out, so I kept these feelings to myself. I said a quick prayer and followed her to the bedroom. We kissed and cuddled for a bit, nothing too crazy, and then she fell asleep. I just laid there for a while in silent darkness, lost in thought. Sometime later, I most certainly heard someone walking down the hallway outside the bedroom. The door was closed, however, so I couldn't see anything. I was definitely frightened, but my curiosity got the better of me, so I went to investigate. Slowly, I opened the door. I looked to my left, then to my right. Nothing. I walked downstairs to check out the rest of the apartment. Nothing. I went back upstairs to check the bathroom and the guest bedroom. Nothing. When I walked out of the guest room, which was right across from my date's bedroom, I looked to my left and right again. At the end of the hallway, I saw a black, humanoid body standing there perfectly still. It was almost like a shadow, but I couldn't discern that it was a three-dimensional figure. This figure was large in stature. There's no way it could have been my date. She was maybe 5'1" at best. I ran back into my date's room. To my horror, she wasn't in bed where I left her. I called out her name, but there was no response. I had just walked through the entire apartment, so it literally made no sense to me that she wasn't there. The bed was low to the ground, so she couldn't be under it. The closet was open too, and it was packed with boxes, so I knew she wasn't there either. The window was shut tight, plus it was the second story. It was as if she vanished. I grabbed my things and ran out of the apartment half-dressed. The shadowy figure was gone. I jumped in my car and sped away. I never heard from her again. Her Tinder profile was deleted the next day, and she never responded to any of my texts. To this day, I have no idea what the fuck happened that night. I maybe could have found my way back to her apartment again, but something in my gut tells me not to try. Anyways, this was easily one of the most terrifying, inexplicable things I've ever experienced. When I was around 13, I had a strange fascination with those games you could play to summon spirits, e.g. the Midnight Man and one-man hide-and-seek. One day, I spent hours reading up on those kinds of games, and that very night I had a nightmare that made me wake up in a cold sweat. When I looked out my window, it was still dark, so I checked my phone to see the time, and it was 3:33 a.m. Because I read up on those spirit games online, I knew that 3:33 a.m. was some special time. A lot of these spirit games would have to be completed by 3:33 a.m., but I didn't know why. Anyways, I just brushed it off, went back to sleep, and had a normal day afterward. Next night comes, and the same thing happens. I'd have a nightmare, wake up, and when I checked the time, it would be 3:33 a.m. This happened for about a week, and after the fourth night, I tried seeing if I could break the cycle by waiting to check the time. One night, I lied in bed for what felt like an hour, and when I checked the time, it would still be 3:33. Eventually, it stopped happening, after I had the brilliant idea of just not checking the time after I woke up from the nightmares. Nothing exciting happened afterward at all. Nothing happened to me or anyone I knew, and life was just normal. The only weird thing I can really think of is not having any dreams since the nightmares happened. A part of me likes to think that it was just my 13-year-old brain playing tricks on me. But I can never fully convince myself that it didn't happen. When I was a junior in high school, I was finally diagnosed with a disorder that had been plaguing me for 3 years. The doctor gave me some meds to take twice a day. The next day, I take the medication for the first time with my breakfast and go off to school. My first hour was actually a study hour, so I would work in the main office, answering phones and running errands and such. Way better than being stuck in study hall. We own that school. Anyway, as the hour progresses, I start feeling worse and worse. Dizzy, nauseous, etc. The guidance counselor came in, and I basically fell in his arms saying hello. He and the vice principal carried me down the hall to the nurse's office. I say that in quotation marks, because funding for a school nurse had been cut years ago. They laid me on a cot in a small room, closed the door and left. I remember looking at my hand and thinking it couldn't be my hand, because if it was my hand, I could move it, and I definitely could not move this hand. My whole body felt like lead, like it was sinking into the cot. At the same time, I started to float over the cot, till I was floating on the ceiling, looking down at myself. Then I floated through the cinder block wall into the coach's office, where I watched the counselor and the vice principal discuss if they should call an ambulance for me. I did not want an ambulance, and the next thing I know, I'm zipping back into my body, and I call out, first weakly, then louder, so they hear me through the closed door. Do not call an ambulance. That's when I first learned that my body is hypersensitive to new drugs or medicine. Oftentimes, doctors will prescribe a high dose because I'm obese, but if my body has never seen that drug before, or it's been a super long time since I've taken it, it's usually way too much. If I'm in control of it, I cut the meds in half.